Daydreaming with Rainer Maria Rilke. Can't see the words for the Elegies. A philosopher poet's picaresque tale. Preface. This is a peripatetic poetic philosophic picaresque perambulation of a mystical poet philosopher, writer liar. It is a tale told of traveling through the Duino Elegies. The first 8 elegies are questions. I feel the last 2 are answers of a sort. There are 2 versions of the 5th elegy, the first which is contained in a Rilkesque poetic miscellany. The 9 published elegies will be journeyed or worked though including the final 5th elegy, which was the last one to be written, and is perhaps the question that the last 2 elegies posed in the answering. What follows are in effect journeys through the Duino elegies, and are examples of aposis and non-poesis modulated by a cyclic probability amplitude that is the result of an ability to respond that is modulated by Dirac's superposed transitional state and Keatsian negative capability. At the end of the day, or the beginning of the night, added to this potional notional response is a conjurer's combination that is rhizomic, narcissistic and echoic in nature, as explicated by Deleuze and Derrida, Urjaki, and their thaumaturgic wordless futureless philosophies. Rilke a poignant emergence into and out of the sageful sadness of man. This is a dreamatization of Rilke's Duino elegies. It is a narcissistic echo in that sense of my entering into the poems as an act of cosmosis, sometimes called dreamatization. Dreamatization at work. To live completely in the words that drifted across the years and through translation and interpretation became a watchword for the dreaming reality, that impossibility contained in all Rilke's work, his things made invisible by invisible proboscis collecting the honey from that pit of entangled holographic entropic quantum coherence that our incoherently decoherent lives are suspended above. At the quantum trinity, yes RMR, I can see your hours of hard graft sitting beside Picasso and his saltimbanques, see Elegy 5 and pictures, moving seamlessly between the unfathomable interconnectedness of quantum coherence, weaving the decoherence and incoherence that fold unhinged together in your poems, bringing tears of conviction in our from people like me. We, who live with the American emptiness you predicted where the majority of materialistic people can but wear a cloak of invisibility, trying to create a shield to hide from the light, from the weightlessness of being, lost for the real invisibility of death of the disappearing bees, but not for me and many others. Narcissistic echoes. My eyes are glazed over as I walk with you as you did with Picasso, as you did with roses and bees, hidden by and from the universe on our invisible earth, sneakily seeing it all laid out on a complex numbered map of all space-time. It is my sadness for the loss that you predicted, our faces stuck into the visible, completely risible so far from reality humanity has grown. Elegy 1. The end was near. It was an early spring night in late April. The Mediterranean sea crests were white-topped. The dim sickle moonlight reflected surprising, stark. The wind blew as never known. The clouds had spilt, no rain fell. The air salty spray of the lashing sea. All receiving, all unfurthered. All in. All young. All together. The gardens of the stunning Castillo Duino precariously perched on the Dalmatian cliff coastline. Gulped the air like newborn, fearful multiverse filled. Words were torn. Sudden seized by the sky the sea's strong mistful breath. Can you hear angelic painted lady, the wind took words and spread them to amongst the uncountable stars, galaxies, and birth nebulae wanderlustful. Words whipped creamily from mouth last breath gone. Outflowing their unspeakableness. She fluttered her multiversal eyelashes. She blowing like a whale gale. A voice from the darkness sprang. In the misty tearfulness Dante's purgatory there lingered. Hanging man Boltzmann tragically took his own breath. He was dancing on a rope of entropically holographically entangled twine. Too much wine? Ending in knowledgeable despair, dejected saw and heard. A ghostly spooky at a distance image draped in the garb of a gladiatorial hero. Chance randomly saluted on death. Presence filled with the fullness of a self-made masked moment. Time's arrow walked in doubt, mystery, and uncertainty. Is it cancelable, irreversible, invisible? Amused, disembodied. Who, what, how, when or when in the universe could hear? Chance is a strangeness to live with. The random mistress of the skies will not aid. Try to look. It disappeared in full gaze. It stared away. It appeared again. Shimmering, wistful, warningly whispering. If the painted lady could hear, would she take essence invisible into her heart, or would it disappear into an unbearably more powerful existence? The beauty of the gardens perched precarious was frightening. The nascent terror of an epiphany came. This being here became virtually unbearable. It staggeringly caught in the destructive shrapnel gale of a gas shell bursting. I swimming with tears unbidden. Felled by words. Flailing desperately rasped the buttressed railing. That stood by the precipitous teardrop to the surf-flecked dark invisibleness below. Dante's boltsman was ready for the fall, a noose about his neck, tempting a leap of faith. Don't look back, I heard him say. Fear, however, was disdainfully refraining to destroy. A cry too to the make-up muse of the night infinite within and without was swallowed sobbing darkly, a crawling pitiful echo of self. Was it a question, or a quest emerging superposed through the blinding terror? Neither the universe nor men can you make it useful. Realize that the world of the word is a now place, never landless, ne'er at home, ever alienated. The painful rose, dragging up the railings, only dimly aware of the gravel that pierced profusely bleeding body. The words destroyers, seducers, solaceful saviors. The voice beside self in the wind now bade search saint elsewhere for questions. Turning slowly, as if pushed by the elements aghast, a glazed gaze formed the silhouettes of olive trees thrashed about by the wind. These reminded a pauperish Caspar David Friedrich tree, thrashed by the planet's turmoil to cling to the steep slope regardless. There are small shadowy figures secured by an anklet of iron agonizing also. The cryptochrome painter had captured the image just as loyally, recalling the ruse d'antan and visible habitual blue-eyed places that reminded affectionately, as if never arriving or ever left. It was painted make-up that recalled sending you into ruptured rapture. I saw her now too, as the trees were highlighted against the clear wandering disheveled stars and slivered silver moon. My angelic painted lady incandescent. There was the endless night. I gasped anew, shaking exhausted and full to giving. I had to grasp to railing anew to stop my descent. I wondered who this lover was whose celestial wine wore out my face as I sought solace at her breast. There was no staying to succor the tarot cards of a solitaire heart. Was it who had yearned for, caressingly gentle, standing before barely faceable, questioning? Does the needless night hide us and lighten us, allowing love to flow? Feel the delicate form in the room and the fire flickeringly lit, the wombness of it all. How abandoned fate and in between us, threw it away in the moment juices burst forth to nothing. Kin on skin emptily hid another. That emptiness sprang out into that space where was and weren't was, so the earth could breathe again. Perhaps birds could feel these earth-inspired and expired magnetic thermals of existence more intimately in their crypto-blue-eyed light flight. It is maybe when the snowdrop photosynthetically first shows its pale head that realization of renewal was fresh in veins and each star was there to feel it. The wind suddenly gusted and like a wave of universal exhalation lifted out of the past and future the cerulean mystery that lit the once polarized path uncollapsing the lost waves of being. There sat in a side street cafe in Prague away from the dreaded military academy my father had sent me to in fear for my masculinity. Their inevitable verse rose, opening petals, poetic pistols potently coming. While just learning to surrender, to forgive to the quest of questioning, there arose from a tenement window a violin, caressingly candid, totally disowning thanksgiving of itself. This was living the question harvested in answer form. But what question, my love? This was also experienced in Rodin's studio, as his secretary, sitting quietly for hours watching the creation of lovers and fighters, seducers and soldiers, born from chiseled stone, the complete giving of the admixture of artist his tool, his material. Just as in the field hospital a dying Tommy, words written on the back of the daguerreotype that slipped from hand when he breathed out the last of the yellow slime that had sucked him, the fighter, thinker and kisser, from us in an act of ultimate hospitality. Steffi, forget me not. And Keats lying painted on his, so Victorian, so English, deathbed of negative capability also pointed to a giving that even death cannot stem. All this seemed as natural as the missionary position, but was it something that the questioning quest could paint the lady with? The shapes of the constellations were there dashingly between the broken clouds, astrological excited anticipation, Boltzmann's expectation of entropy of ever-increasing possibilities and entangled holographic plotting to distract. Closeted close knitted together, with the distant sun's strange thoughts filling to overflowing excess. Could it contain your vast intellect, lover, with its ins and outs, as you do in this night sky? A stare saw the shape and form of the cosmos, flowing in tandem with the vast swathe of the Milky Way thence to the Virgo cluster. An untouchable matter of darkness, but now, for one night only, entirely. In this desire waveform of the music of the spheres, a notoriously finite aria feelingly forsaking those enviously who found satisfaction in love. The Aeolian harp strongly played in this dreamy symphony an endless counterpoint, unattainably praising the heroes who extend their lives in the cosmos. Castor, Pollux, Orion, Diana, Venus, and bloody-mouthed Jupiter, there in the sky immortalized, though in our pantheons they were merest echoes in many a narcissist's academic archive. This finite infinity in the cloud-flashing night through the little light of the sickle. Here the cycle by which lovers are periodically taken back by knackered nature. Taken regularly into herself as if there were not the power to remake them. I remembered fucking Gaspar Stampa and her totally giving violently potent verse, how this periodic timetable grasps when her gasps come up empty, just as the shooting star forebodes the worst. But I also jealously regarded her passion, her stellar passion, and wondered why I couldn't be like her. Just being full of penis, just enjoying being on top. Why shouldn't her ancient wisdom, her suffering be fecund for me and you too? The wind-fallen olives that will be strewn upon the ground. Why can't they fruitful for all of us, Gaspara? I gasped. I felt stronger with the passion of this woman in my heart, and moved down a path to a fountain whose innumerable nuances spilled up and back over itself, but now was caught in the grasp of the storm and mistily spread in a more obliviously random way, like a virus in a sneeze, infecting the skies beyond, inevitable. From the cloud there emergent was a cupid rising on a plinth spray of flowering water. Flanked by the physicist and the lover I stood statuesque. See the arrow of time enduring the restrictive harshness of the bough trembling and beloved ready to free us. Agonizing in the flight and suffering of love to make it something more than it is in essence, impossibly fertile, their voices intertwined interconnectedness undeniably potent. I sat on the stone edge and saw as from a distance the blood drip from my hand into the sheltered water of the fountain's pool. The dark drops fell forming mesmeric small waves like a quantum contradiction, a small blood sacrifice, a realization that flowing is all, remaining is being nowhere. It was as the bloody martyr's sacrifice, whose voices heard the heartbeat of us all, of the coherent completely joined quantum universe. Voices upon voices raising us from the earth. Though we lived on habit they knelt on and ignored the impossible that we lived, so acute was their hearing that the stone-pierced flesh procured for them. Now me. It's not as if I could stand the voice of the painted lady physicist, universe modeled incoherently after our own fashion, as the blood spreads forth and I feel light-headed distant from that consummation unwished for. But the breath of the universe blowing through me here, listen to it. Hear its unbroken sound resolve into a Morse code of silence. The telegram reaches its destination as the death of a callow youth in a trench, rushing to you too. like the memorials that I saw in Passchendaele, stretched out arms of stonily topped youth, or in a graveyard high in the Alps' clean air where he was not supposed to die, I heard their insistent quiet impressions in the exultation of a few words. In dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. I had traveled to Naples and Rome many winter past and heard their quiet deaths speak fatefully to me. I had wandered into the Venetian church of Santa Maria Formosa, perversely balanced high at the end of a windy, dusty summer path, to be exalted by a tablet inscription that impressed itself onto me like a soaring eagle, like a Gutenberg printing press. I saw the voices, heard the lightning of the stained glass wordlessly praising. Now there, now here, what do these impressive impressions of the fetal cosmic justice will of me, Socrates? I heard myself say. I find myself in court, a building of just ice. It is a miraged admixture of all ideas of such things, but with a personality of quiet insistence stopping the free-flowing painted lady whose essence was all. The examined examiners, assessed assessors, consumed consumers, possessed possessors, their awareness of the injustice of it all hindering a pure moving on that I felt we should gently remove, like the mote of dust from a lover's eye. This court was indeed unearthly in all its aspects, and the feeling of the terrestrial was here alien, profoundly strange. There all the habits newly acquired were not new. Le futur et l'avenir are devoid of any rose-like promise, not to be identified as an individual anxiously acting out one's delicate role. In doing so you even set aside your own proper name, a broken toy no longer of any use to you. This disconnected courtroom of unjust ice does not allow us wish our wishes. Strange it is to see all that was as clear as daylight, all our certainty floating like so many lost particles in space, but also seeing our interconnectedness with these random flowing stellar islands of freedom. We released from vain feigned singularity like the Big Bang. It's hard when the judgment day has come, trying retrieve all the alienness of being before we gradually drift from nothing into nothing, slowly feeling the gradualness of the little eternity. It's when we are living in this palace of just ice that we make the mistake of distinguishing between us and them. When in the dynamic of the painted lady's mating ritual, it is said, one would not be able to discriminate between the living or dead. It's because the eternal coherent current sweeps all space-time, destabilizing all concreteness as Vesuvius did Pompeii, with the stony figures cowering in disbelief. What was inanimate became massively dynamic, while the animated was ossified. Such a current swirls and eddies through both the decoherent and incoherent, and coherently resounds inside and outside, and in both of them. These youths who stood in their blood and dust-caked armless uniforms, camouflaged in the garb of manifold nations, in the courthouse, both accused and accusing. They all speak their local dialects and understand. They don't need us, they the early departed of all ages taken from suckling breast of living, just as their mothers had gently weaned them they outgrow us. As the hand reached towards red-eyed death. Their great secret is beyond us, mystical, an overarching mayfly coupling which bids us cry for them who don't need our salty tears. But as we progress spiritually via this poignancy, could we be without them? And I am brought to an arid valley where titanic Saturn sits, dethroned, at his feet Mnemosyne, whose tears of absolution she is crying upon his feet. Her who was once human made immortal by memory. There is a vibrato in the air producing ironically a tune of trenchancy so deep echoing from her breast unbeknownst, an originary narcissistic song which held the valley, all the startled universe in rapture. It was then that though these images were beyond touching that I was inwardly touched by hunter-gatherer ancestral path, caressed by the thermal and quantum quivering of the deathly dreamy peculiar, particular waves and loops that underlay all in a speculative ocean of being, which aided me and comforted me as waking contrived to undo me. Elegy 2. Knowing totality, knowing the painted lady, her heartbeat universe, fear arises. As I sleep this terror forms, as a monarch migrating inward and outward. We are held floating upon a dreamy cloud high above the cities of the world, laid Mercator flat upon a silk handkerchief flowing in the solar wind. And staring into the faceless face, and recognizing it I invoke you nearly lethal soulful flyer. Where are the snows of yesteryear, We swoop buzzless like invisible workers' bees over mountain tops and land our feet, leaving no prints in the peak's crystal covering. The angel bends and, picking up a ball of the stuff, licks his ethereal tongue upon the surface. A fleck of white rests on the tip and is gone. We stood on the threshold of the mountaintop, the radiance of the terror and the sky blending together, ready for the departure, both the ethereal and terrestrial disguised in a troubadour's garb for the syncretic journey. We were not awed by each other, but joined mystically as one. Like curious disciples, we looked out questioningly on the universe spread at our feet. But then suddenly the sky turned dark and dangerous. A transparent archangel was behind the stars, ready to step down to self, to us, light and dark entwined. Now I was both these creatures, and they were me. The surge of being that held me at the top of a hill after a day's climbing, with the surrounding glacier ground greens and grays, the small-tipped gorse winking yellow in the night and day alike below, pricking us with the fragrance of being. And all of us sharing the heart that was mine, beating us up and beating us down upon this dreaming spire of aquatint. About us goblins and gargoyles spouted from the growing stone chiseled by the hand of time's arrow. This creature that we had become, I asked both individually and collectively, a bell peeling away the zest of lostness. What are you? And in answer a question was formed, showing the universe looping the loop, stringing the needle, and coming together upon a ladder of energy which we ascended to the ground as one and saw the ancient gods' favorites. And they were as the architecture of this huge cathedral of the landscape, where we stood as me. The ancients' favorite ones were revealed as we now, like bats in the vaulted ceilings, saw with sound the red sky in the morning spread across this magnificent echo of existence. The origin of much could be seen in the flowering of a volcano standing like a font, baptizing the earth with steamy water, pollinating the planet with minerals and goodness to sustain us in all our finite empty majesty. The vast stained glass windows we saw as aurora, not just the northern and southern as they are now, but flashing with all the polar switches that had alternated over the past eons, opening us to the solar wind again and the multifaceted effect it had on our very essence. The cloisters, stairs and thrones were formed with of beams of light and dark, seeming to matter, the huge spaces lit and shadowed with being, with us struggling and shielded by the tempests and storms, reflected in the hand mirror that I looked into, now seeing the ultimate beauty of my cosmic outflowing from the convex glass back into the face of all three of us. This glass morphed into a microscope mirror, and we were so small that we were able to evaporate and breath ourselves in and out, and like oxygen flow in the fire, ember to ember, now flicking black and red in the ashes, the fragrance of sandalwood fresh as we sensed and incensed. Our voice warming their hands upon us, the dying fire said, "Yes, I see you in my blood, in the red firelit room. See, spring is sprung from our overflowing." But isn't that useless? For rooms cannot hold us, we simply walk through the walls of time and space, disappearing within and without ourselves. And when I come upon a face of beauty, a body of intimately clutching desire, can I hold them back from the fatal embrace that appearance has bound them with? As it stands and delivers of its ephemerality and is gone from us as if it was never quite there. Lying in the rich grass after our cloying encounter, we are like warm dishes that have been fed from, and we become droplets of dew resparkling, basking in the sun's first rays, little lenses coolly heating the universe. There is on our lips the smile of the smug after beauty has passed by and through us. It's a rising upward thing. If we had been given a name, we would have self-satedly torn it up and thrown it into the city gutter and turned our back on it. Then our look strays to the high tenements about us, newly feeling the warmth of our heart, feeling its particularized waviness vanish. It is that which we are. As our gaze drifts higher, we feel ourselves dissolve into the cosmos, wondering if it tastes of us. Are the angels delighted perhaps only to take what they possess, that is what they have given to us, by their furtive flybys? But together we see that they take our own daily doing, the walking, the talking, the stalking, the questioning that drives us ever on to a superabundance of pleasure and poverty. Do not these domes opiate created by poets and paupers then not give the pause for thought also for an angelic commingling? It's the lush blush on the cheek of a child-bearer and her bile rising with aurora, Diana's cyclic infusion of blood giving substituted by a fetal fulfillment of death that our bodies give us. It's the indeterminism in the mother's eye, for there they are the angels, and this giving, this returning to themselves. They can't see it in the womb swirling of being as it moves from the death before us to the death after us. But how would they be the transience that is not theirs, but ours? I show the angels who share me the intimate moments where lovers move themselves up and down on a divine fulcrum between the pre- and post-life. They gasp uttering strangeness to the night air that engulfs them with an embrace that seems to hide us from everything. The caresses, the penetration, the gasps, the sweaty bodies clasped in a Rodin pose. The hardness of the kiss's unyielding stone, look at it, the solidity that will outstretch its giving past us, just as trees do still ring upon ring adding and our homes bricked still stand and watch our passing. That kiss, an exchange of air, a sigh of impending flea-bitten dog who nuzzles against us to assuage his eternal itch. We are as the dog and the fleas and the itch, we with our identity hidden as treasure in a cache behind the painting of Dorian Gray, whose aura is half shameful, half inexpressible hope. Seeing the lovers on a carpet before this portrait, under which a huge grated fire blazes, I look questioning their mutual satisfaction. Do you have a sign for your unified separation? And once I am there, a part of the sticky cloyed coupling on the carpet, examined and examiner. I feel my hands touching and being touched, I am thrust and thrusting, within and without, the face that I wear hides itself between the lovers. An iota of sense this gives me, is this what we dare to exist for, just this? It's the cosmic that grows with the delight of their embrace until they beg. Enough and lie back glassy-eyed and exhausted. Wine darkened. The universal connective that grows richer as the special years of the grape. The feet felt these were the vintage even before the chemical process mixed it into the blood of a youthful rebel. In a caveau we sipped the harvest of years gone and to come, all blurred so that we vanished, angels and men in the ascendancy of the other, that which is not us. I ask you to tell us of us, you the other. The caveau changed slowly, or was it us? The rock showed us how its cold wall caress was once unbearably hot, bent by the forces of the earth's core, and how we stood there not disappearing because the feeling that sustains is just that, pure duration. Your promise is eternity, from the stone kiss, from the volcanic font spilling the first terrible looks that you bear. From a cottage window you see a figure of yearning that walked with you just once through the idyllic garden of planetary fecundity. You who drink from the loving cup, aren't you the same, suspended sip to sip, lip to lip? We can see in this gesture that the drinker escapes to dens of alcoholic delight strangely lost from the lover's action of giving, appearing as Dionysian carvings on stone needles erected for amazing but always, oddly erring on the side of caution. Is it because loving and leaving were such light burdens that they didn't seem to be made of visible matter at all? The tempest had laid our ship awrack and my body alone upon a tropical beach. I breathed CBT instructions after pressing the panic button on Commonwealth. I walked to a small hut that lay in the shade of a palm tree and sat on the veranda step. My hands lay in my lap, not subject to gravity wishing to float, but the energy of a lover's flexed body powerfully pulls them to resting restiveness. Me and my angelic companions know together self-possessed that this control that it is masturbation, the self-loving self gives us much. But the eternal forces of nature will weigh us down full fathom 5 with pearls as our eyes. So I sit drowned dead and not pressed down by the impossible possibilities that the ancients gift us. But that is their giving, and we do not own it. I upon this cusp between dead and alive, calm upon the beach and resting as fish feed with my crown of thorns in the coral. I just need to capture the innumerable nuance of the air and water in my alveoli lungs, making the heart exceed itself, even as the gone forebears did. We lingered on shore and saw no more the scenes that act as balm to calm us in our eternal dream forms where we are totally restrained from this piteous act of eye-opening wakefulness by a digital alarm conjured. Elegy 3. Upon the sea bed we entwined and the wetness of my dream almost drowned me. Let me go on top, you insisted, just like Gaspara. We had met very recently, but the intimacy between us was an eternal act upon an infinite stage, the promise of you ethereal, reflected in your strawberry blonde hair. You had invited me through a door behind a reredos which hung in a strangely intimately manner in a great cathedral-like structure which we had penetrated as bats via the star-vaulted roof. We entered a cozy wood-paneled room. A welcoming fire burning was the only light, glistening upon the finial's gold and gilded spines innumerable. There stood an expectant antique writing desk set with ancient writing materials which were for my use only. Being drawn irresistibly to it, like Merlin, I followed its gleam. Its shape, once I approached it, became uncertain to me. Was it a table or a bed? Husserl would have known. I sat behind or on it, an implement in hand. I dipped it into the well and saw that I was the ink and the papyrus, the sperm and the donor. I felt myself double entering us and the egg at the same time singing "fuck me." There was a commingling there of a river god of our blood, joining and splitting as one and twain for the first time on the way to the spilling of a life. As you thrust down on me, I didn't know myself. I was in a downcoming wave of particles, seemingly a Valentino of the firmament coming to a sticky end as a young lover. She only knew me distantly as the universe took hold of my solitariness and pulled it into her balmy, invisible, incalculable dripping depth. It was the moment that we became the volcano and the sky, the carbon cycle we rode, redly erupting into the dark bespangled sky. It was within a stratum beyond time, in a fertilized seed bed, that we sped to some fecund trinity held by Poseidon. His terrifying bloody trident attempted to assail us. More frightening though was blowing from his conch horn, a hurricano twisting in our shell like so the night seemed so dilute that it was like an echo in an endless tunnel. This winding of the horn swept us up with the wandering disheveled stars, guided by Fergus upon his brazen car, so we as lovers were the source and the result of all this quantum energy which lit our faces constellation bright. So intense we could not look into each other's eyes without falling, gefallenen. I never realized there were so many stars, one for every life ever earned and spent. Then I saw her face caught in the shadow of invisible matter, full of loving infertility like a swarming star womb at the rim of a galaxy. Spiraling between Charybdis and Scylla, we were on a precipice of insight, seeing our love's explosive power from the purity of a chain reaction, climbing or descending Polly's ladder. Was there here the very moment of my own birth shining through in the fecundity of our own stellar nativity? It was not Oedipal blood that spilled in this joining that arched my eyebrows into a curve of expectation. Nor was it the feeling that my lover had for my just being here close-bosomed friend to the maturing sun that made the labia that had also softly spoken became, so bend into a shape more profoundly fecund. I saw us as aliens on an internet Thai beach, her and me head smashed to a pulp by a jealous religious fanatic lover. I lay wide-eyed in the water, penis flopping in the waves. And she lay legs wide, lips still showing the last entrance and her nipples and lips volcanic ash gray. Her blood lay about her crushed skull like a red halo, not a blonde but a redhead. Remotely too I observed and participated and posed questions of us both, of us all who are bound Promethean to the Higgs fields that sprouted clumps of boson fruit in bunches of visibility that seemed to be matter of fact that posed yet more questions in its wake. Was it dawn that shuddered us to our core, like a shower wandering with the wind, like the sea washing us ashore? I was absolutely petrified by this thought, but saw that it was not just me, it was us, it was the join of all those ancestors who walked frighteningly behind, beside, and in front of us had laid this touching material honey trap. Were we now truly fucked? As if in response, I hear your voice impelled by the non-passage of time trying to persuade, trying to cajole me from the apparent darkness of invisible matter that swallows me in its own possessive embrace. I do want to be free of these crushing hidden arms where I feel so lost. I find myself in your codified depths, caches of your givingness bearing gifts of relief, whereby I find Pyrrhic victory in my hands allowing me to start, but start what? It was not me who started anything. Was it not my mother who dropped my wee lump of fragileness into the lottery of being? My newness was not mine, but something that I got from your suckled breast, your small gentle form hiding my eyes from all the mischances of the world, the abysses you simply wiped off like puke from my chin. I recalled then, in vision, my smallness that you had maternally donated to me as a gift from the hospitality of your torso's play center, the strangeness and bigness of it that you tried to hide me from. My unfocused eyes then that were frightened of nothing but saw all as it was supposed to be. I saw the ghosts before, during, and after life wandering in hordes about me, comforting me. But all the while you tried to protect me with mellifluous words and music while you worked. These sounds ironically would persuade me to become human, all too human. It was your smiles that were real. The fear came from the words that you spoke which were not yours, and which were now taking me over slowly, restricting my vision with possession. But you were still my friend. The words that are not said, that are ours, proclaimed this as you placated the creakings of a dark waterboarded and floorboarded room to me as I became enmeshed in interpretation, as I became visible and naked beneath the eyes and wheels of fire, with just a touch of your tender hand on my brow. You knew what you had done to me when you slept, and the painted lady's path was revealed. I was encouraged to walk this alley of dreams where my shrouded fate comforted me potently. However, words gradually invaded even this boyish sacred place, and from behind the wardrobe and curtains all kinds of demons arose that were a portent of my fearful, wordful, possessed restive future. I laid there gazing, just before sleep, the cusp where possessed possession could not assail me, relieved of the wordy burden now, knowing that I was not a creature of such a place, for I had tasted the pre-logos sleep long ago. Thus it was the dams broke, allowing the flood of cosmopolis, of creative energy to flow, finding their splintered posis, praxis, techne and phronesis unprotected and near suffocated by classification. This dreaming threw caution to the winds, and I was exposed as a child exposed on a mountainside, my ankle manacled, my body thrashed by the unrelenting elements. It was a feverish opening up of all things, this beginning that was not a beginning, but a speechless return to the mountain passes, to the constellations of being. There were beasts of many sort here in this dark tangled jungle, its multifaceted greenery itself seeming to threaten my being, but I just gave myself to it all. I loved it as totally other, within and without me. These roots connected us like a universal fungal network. The lattices of clumped matter so formed had assumed the shapes of my beloved inner outback, where the creatures, rock, scrub, and corroboree received me whole. Then we fire started, and all was raging, and death ruled. But so soon green shoots appeared out of the horror of the fountain of fire, phoenixes out of the ashes bred from the deep, in the water places of this landscape that was the very blood of the land's heartbeat. This I gave to myself as a gift of the pen to a swan, then I gave it up, and there too was love, upon the paths that my ancestors had walked and fed from and rebirthed with fire. And I saw my handprints in the red rocks of the scarred hills mixed with those of my forebears, feeding to overflowing on the symbols of invisibility made clear by the ochre, red and black images that nudged me to tell their story, full of love, horror, and comfort. This filled me with a dread that smiled upon me with warmth that was rare even on mother's lips. And even in the womb where the dread was filtered through the placenta, lightening the floating embryo that I had become, full of love and solution. It said that we don't love as flowers do annually, we have an immortal sap rising within, flowing between us as fluids exchanged. We both share this streaming. I feel it as those fathers who are our foundations, like scree or terminal moraine. You perhaps like mothers of yore whose dry watercourses dendritic scar the landscape. These scenes rest silently, clarified or clouded by destiny, coming before us. The dry arid landscape where there is thunder and no water is where we conjure up the prime evil in ourselves, loving being as it is. These lives that are wandering, unheimlich in the maneuvered desert, how did the feeling spring from them? I see their women hating me and sinister men stirring my virility. Was sought too by dead kids haunting in their respect for my specter, my scepter. Oh, please gently show me your love confidently as a diurnal work, take me by the hand, bring me into the garden. Are you and me overcoming those nights we shared? Was it as if I was bearing you, you bearing me, caught in the rose, sepal, anther, seed, and compost, the human, the fetus, sperm, egg and corpse all fecundly, composed. Shanti. Shanti. Shandy. Tristram. Elegy 4. The war raged and I was stuck here hoping, looking for a refuge inside out questioning. I walked alone, not alone in the Schwarzwald bathed in spice and thyme. O black forests, where are your gray leaf bee-topped offspring, ashen, silver snow-sown, seemingly frozen in time's coldest, darkest hours of being? Gray-hamed goose-steppers, we see the trees add formulaic rings reflecting the ways disconnected from the winds of the world, separate, seasoned by solitariness. Would seas not trees? The huts felled from the woods formed dams that drowned us in duty where lies are behind the barbed wire. As you enter under the gate surmounted by the cast ironically arched slogan Arbeit mocked free. The trees marched past woodenly. We ate so much we were sick. They locked us back up the GI turnkeys. Schritt Zurich? Aufklärung? But even here the fluttering monarch, the painted ladies that we see from our gas-ready huts remind us that there is something beyond us floating free. As we put the larva between our hunger-drawn lips, we tasted the cosmically guided strange force at a distance. We can join to the caterpillar, to the cocoon, and the thousands of miles of knowing connected by their quantum entanglement, wordless to the flowing that we have lost in diurnal drudge. In gassed untouchable alabaster chambers we wait forget-me-not stone laid on stone. The ground we were buried in mass does not remember us, the water where we are thrown unshod either. The flowers that entangled the butterflies nectarily we see slavishly as memoria wreathed to our disconnectedness. Whether within or without the gulag wire. The green shoots seen just as signs of our pandemic death, herded to extinction by our betters, who have wagered humanity's future on empty, unfulfillable promises. For all of us lost. And when the plains of the world are become animalist, even though we cannot see it, the lion will majestically roam, despite our own goneness. When we realize the dazzlingness of the loss, we shed crocodile tears. Anguish does not become us, so butterfly's demise has created hostility in our hearts. We the imprisoned imprisoners, turnkeys of a relentless ignorance that somehow sates us by locking us up. So the open empty wilderness has no reason but irony in the soul to be. We hear then the inevitable clatter of 4x4 and pixelated shots slaughtering a specially bred beast. Not wilderness but virtual scenery made of a binary reality that entanglement will readily unravel. The eyes are easily fooled. The nays have it, they have a sex-driven fantasy finite free-falling in them, denying the sky, accepting the vicariousness of their short-termist being. The dig-it-all digital pornography that this wilderness engenders shows lovers sprawled on volcano-edged ecstasy, that lava that forms a world of space, of hunters, of hunted all at home and planet spew-sated. These pixels show us the contrasted sub-imagery dream. Like the momentary sketch of something not quite captured by the camera, camouflaged in pink and gray hues intermixed, daring us to see it, our binary self-loving seconds espouse intervened interconnectedness. Waiting. Patient. We had unbeknownst donned rose-tinted lenses. Action, the show begins. You on top, you moan. Don't feel it, just look it. The shape is what matters. Feeling doesn't have a shape, his face will be pixelated, it's just you who is important. Gaspara. Scream. Moan. You bitch. Come for me. The bell rang, glass. Clang. For whom doth it toll? The application registered Bitcoin payment from those sat far seeing dig it all, hearts fast, faster beating, spurting seconds behind the curtain. The stage sticky with blood, the backdrop opening sweet sorrow. Cut. Nice and sleazy does it every time. Savvy? The naked forms rose from the divan set in a famous fig leaf garden. Prompted by whispered wispy will's wave appears an autumnal wind-fallen snakeskin, the writhing serpent. No, not him. The light follows his dance. Shocked to his corroboree core. The stage is empty, so he turns the screen off, knowing the history, needing to wash his hands of the whole thing. She is glad it's all over. He walks through his well-appointed apartment, through her hung sun-kissed combinations, into the kitchen. His mask slips. He smiles at his inflatable wife sat on a kitchen chair, waiting, here not on the computer. He picks her up, forcing himself on her wired husk of a body, her sheer appearance of desire. The camera picks it all up, as he sits on the seat, her on top. If the lights go out, the infrared will kick in. I can't see if there's anything more. He cannot see or feel the drifting vacuum of gray ground state energy. The offstage wind drifts through the hanging sheer slips, emptying each other. Two dolls in love. He is blind. He gouged out his own brown squinting eyes. Crowds of ghosts are gone, none remain. Not even a woman breastfeeding a boy who is then neverlandless fucking my father. The remains of him are still here, in an urn on the shelf, watching me, watching you. I'm right, you old bastard, aren't I? His ashes stare down at me bitterly. Drunken son, do not go gentle into the night. We traveled the country lanes, and you told me of fears, not caring about mine. I was a lumpen proletarian, not allowed to be. You had to be me, demeaning me, subduing me as I grew, trying me as judge and jury, clouding my gaze, fading unfazed. Did you smell my fear, stalking your death mask with a silent shushing sunambulance? The graveside manners grew thin, the body too long for its last home. The questioning hooded man stood by, protecting the green valley by sacrificing his children. I shook with DT rage, hiding from you in a vacuum, with a ground state energy slowly ceding to fate. Did you ever miss me, missionary father? Your religious zeal to cover the base metals rusted my hope, drowned my waving. Particular, I heard you kill me, inhaling poisons deep. You tasted me and spat me out, flowing. This is where love transubstantiated to hate. I'm starting to be right, aren't I, you old bastard? You are just like the other ghosts on my ancestral path, translucent and tragically transient. Lost in the space of your face, paternal love. You were gone then, with the rest, and relentless relief overcame me as the multiverse opened cavernous at my feet, all engulfing. Thus dolls and puppet angels staged a staggering expose of themselves on the holographic screen, revealed. Swallowing the wallowing me whole. I held my breath as the dimensions became melded mellifluously, entangled by supernumerous, ever-returning gunness of an eternal fountain of knowledge. The gray bee-topped trees, seasoned thus, march with me, showered with the multi-spice of becoming. The monarch and his angelic painted lady danced about me. They knew wordlessly the unspeakably distant flights of fancy. The dying see this cycle too soon, looking at themselves in their cankerous mirror. They reflect and surely suspect that the inevitable Smith slavishly stares back at us. Us the pretext, the context, foreshadowed vicariously virtual in daguerreotype amber. The children of these images are the inheritors who stare into a pensive for hours. They're seeing themselves become a spoon jumping over the moon, the rhyme and reason lost along the border between l'avenir et la future, betwixt Madame l'amour et Madame la mort. The stage becomes dim and the words fade diurnal and bingo crepuscule trapped. I looked out, flowing at the pandemic's evensong. The dreamtime serpent dragging me along. Dying to meet my maker. Wanting to grow into it too quickly, seeing it from the pram perspective, where the toys were all the shadows beyond my small hands grasping. Before words destroyed the future. And when we first used them, lying through our milk teeth, we cried incessantly, knowing that we were destroying all that we were, everlasting self-entertaining alone, but one with the butterfly's pure event. Caught betwixt the astrolabe and its meaning, beginning the multiverse pivoted upon a Pythagorean divine fulcrum. There was a way, being a child in the future, wrapped, warped, and whisperful. The toy that wore a mask, Hamlet's helmet spectre, scepter, swords thrust. Then the poison in the early departed, dearly departed ear, we knowledgeable see shake scenes unkind nature staged before us. An ultrasound of the fully formed 5 or foot fetus center stage in Galen's theater. I murdered my kid, the mother and father foundations of guilt, death givers, killers. But the constellation of child soldiers chained by the secret police to harvest the prison camp crops contains more dark energy and matter fungal clusters than we can counterpoint. The murderous guards we understand, they can't destroy anything with their tattooing zeal. The Zyklon be shower rooms, merely unleashing the fungal spores, the painted lady's wings wasp infested. The death giver's precipitous drop of blood infuses our being with supernumerous returns, fluxes and reflux ions beyond words. Unspeakableness ensues. Elegy 5. Who are they, the transients, the poor pullulating pupated puppeteers dancing on the screens of the desolate mind landscape, delicately poised throwing the clay of being into an urn painted with the future passed by they fly? Pablo's Pierrots. Located in poverty's grip, painted ladies dancing fragileness and the desolation of apocalyptic landscape foreshadowed. The atomic wind takes the bodies and throws them high or vaporizes them to tearful mistiness. Unspeakably there in a guilt-ridden constellation of consciousness. Sun-sparked fusing gases that became tears for the Gefallenen. These tumblers, the death-givers of paradise, rising and falling by the hourglass tide. At a distance we are mesmerized, neutered by numberlessness, beyond hope. The sky floorboarded, watercourse to lightning, the lodestone of electromagnetic lava, freezing the corpses corroboree in no time. We became a black hole, our event horizons entwined. Milky Way and Andromeda evolved from spiraling to ellipsoid, spinning our own webs of unforgivable intrigue. The juggler's jugular opened, pouring forth a strangeness of staggering starriness. Leaping, lunging, rolling the balls of our feet, balancing as Atlas did to the tambour music of the spheres. We hold the whole on a carpeted magical spell, speculative. Glistening costumes clingingly reveal gossamer fragility, frail fortunes, misspent alcohol-fueled vacuo, past is pissed. The poverty of the momentous leaping stilled under the painted lady's handkerchief, fluttering in the eternal wind-fallen, unhinged boulevard's desolation. We sat on the wooden bench in the urine-stinking bar. She was naked under her thin chemise. We had just descended from my garret, where my paint hung wet on the canvas, after capturing her even as I had entered her. A few sous in her pouch, she skeletal, baby on her breast, taking sips of her as she did of the aniseed poison. As I had of her, I had her on my mind and body. The cluttered room darkly quiet, waiting for the return of her troop from the ragged, tumbling Parisian urban decay to obliviate themselves in piss-soaked drunkenness. The gruel they consumed was of little help. Their deaths were written in the suckling sounds of the baby's efforts to find sustenance in this dry-eyed desert. The group was flower-like, blooming in the street, 4 more word swords cutting to the quick. There was leading them in Augustus the Strong, bending the cheap poisoned pewter plates and sloughing his skin as age and poverty take his jizz, and bury half of him improvising his jazz, her blooming arms catching his ashtray remains. The forehead crenellations, the crow's nest eyes, Espia sitting, he knows her then and smiles painfully, handing her a pathetic poesy of dust-to-dust blooms whose soiled soil clings still to the rusty roots. I was lost then in her floweriness, the fragrance that the butterfly had sought soulfully in us and found me wanting. But she was eternally in her titania bower, my ass's cuckold ears a testament to the praiseworthiness of her suckling pig beatitude. Picasso had been there. So had we, me and Rainer, poets, philosophers, parasitically feeding fungi on the gray flesh. The sky was then full of itself, sudden roof hole shining, us exposed and total in the humanness of the huge canvas that dwarfed us all, sitting now in a Munich town house, gloating at the belongingness inexorable. The trams clattered outside, bells deafening, horse hooves crunched the cobbles, and the air was rank with city stinks. The smells of the shops, the hatter's Madame Lamort, or was it Lamore, I could nie recall. Hope Crosby and Lamore? The perfumier was pungently aware, dropping quantum energy into the air, flitting flickeringly. Instinctual painted ladies strutted their werewolfishness mercilessly. The oils dripped as I scraped the canvas, overplastering the older sketches that X-rays would reveal in New York 100 years on, monochromed by the future. I touched her hand as it reached for the ashtray cheroot, and she glanced demurely, swiftly away, flirtatiously flitting the fag mouth wards. She spoke softly to the son of a neck and a nun whose once huge behind was perched precariousness the end of the bench. The smells of the paints pervaded me like the ingredients of rich odorous ladies of the night. I saw the scene as I sipped the aniseed-laden liquor, feeling the laudanum that I had swigged earlier working in tandem with the poetic elegy that flowed slow about me still. The mind of the proud boy in dress uniform, fearful of the draft, drifting into Switzerland, and a peaceful cuckoo clock stupor swam about me. But that was notoriously not the rhymeless rhythmic dynamic that now drove me. The words once translated were wolfishness lost, floundering in shallow water as sharp bite shock rendered me bloodily tranquil, the salty brine washing me clean, stingray certain, lashing rain started to fall, dripping drowsily through the perforated colander ceiling. The acrobats were not unduly affected and retained their elegance in the newly sodden sawdust stench, moving as if they had on the flying carpeted dirt-floored stage they had so forlornly forsaken with so little reward. Their empty pockets, so empty they rattled deathly. The few coins that had purchased their lives so cheaply tossed into their fated fountain of no return, travail? But they were also still afloat, the eyes full of the life that these few so had given them. The tavern owner would feed them for a show or two, poverty they shared in the thraldom of slave-born surety. The seasons they lived so closely to became a pet of their make-up, ash-white lead, blood-red rouge rendered them eternal, feeling the wordless planet move without and within them. The canvas that I spat their lives upon revealed this. They were undimmable, nothing to lose, the couloir choir of heavenly creatures, shining slick, sweaty, cloyed, sexually sensational. The formulaic squares where they performed were full of passers by whose totality could not be thus questioned. They were numbered amongst the stars, constellations of hope entertained by the ragamuffin troubadours and dancing square after square exponentially, unstoppingly expanding. Each show the same show, rain or shine, and rags or Sunday bespangled best. All there on the rug spread multidimensional, all-knowing ignorant, that dark energy dragged us kicking from a childhood that was unmolested by an ever-expanding fantastical future by just being there attracted, distracted. Fusion and fission fired. Elegy 6. Walking near the regimented olive grove, Ruiger, the sun beat down Grecian urn potent, there we came upon it carved heart butterfly, resting on a low branch. Fruition fig-like fomented my eye, her painted vagina opened powered by osmosis and photosynthesis, pulsating red licked sweetly to heroic Eros's recipe bringing the rapture of rupture. The tree's fingers pointed to the sky directing us to the threshold of being. I held your body against the bark post Poseidon sinking, Scylla Charybdis, Coriolis close we joined, rock and rolled. It was a mountaintop experience. Clingingly the white body endured the unattainable height, a box of unused swan vestas lighting the candle of our desire. Why? Because it was there. We shared our moment even as you bore me and I bore you. I slid down, you avalanched by the need that drove me to attempt this conquest. From the heroic trenches this desire had emerged, the whistle blew and I cocked and rose over the parapet, hot lead flowed about me. How none of it penetrated me I don't know. Barbed wire tore at my flesh. A loop wrapped biblically about my New Testament head. A beard had suddenly appeared. I bore the cross by trying to climb on top of you, glacial love of my life. And you thrust me off just as we had reached the peak. I clung, fingernails clutching to you, whiting outflowed as my arse hold by time was watched by newer heroes, born of my fall. Of our fall. There, heroically, clingingly was the downcoming tree. Caspar David's Oedipal creation alone on the slope, the eagle and ASP in hand outgoing across a glacial bridge of death. Dacian. Dionysian recurrence recrudescent, concupiscent, crepuscular. On the isolated slope a dendritic digit fingered a single fig, powered by the ground state of a non-existent sun, me and my painted lady entwined eternally. Then the ground gave way, swirling toward the deep fjord's depths, sinking, slipping and sliding, gurgling sea engorging itself on land, a slurpingly salacious satisfaction, swallowing wallowingly. The fjord burped and farted, sated? That was the joke of partiality. Wholly I was lost on you, lost in you, without you within you. Each brushstroke a testament to the teasing traitor, time. We both laughed then. We were come to the same point in the story where something significant was about to happen. We hung on to this precipitous moment, held by the will of a fingernail holographic cliff face, ready to plummet. Both on the edge, at the gates of ecstasy. The sea onrushing as the land slipped oceanward. The depths we delved then were untenable, Prospero's painted children coming to life as womb wards we were unborn. We walked then in the alabaster chamber of your garden. Edenward we wanderlustful came together. Your words tenuously traced the universe swerving between plain planes of existence hand in hand, your butterfly being enhanced by the strokes of fortune and pain that had painted your poems into fantastical freehands of fate. Your pale face stared at me as we turned into an amorous arbor. Your dead respectable breasts, nipples hardened as temptress eyes, still sensually timed, cheatingly lip-lickingly luscious. The sky agonized over your tremulous tenacity, the words wretched stretched parchment like on the rack of time. The shadows dark highlighted your paleness more, your eyes brightly outlined the meaning of the figs that we consumed slowly juice flowingly upon the hyacinth tressellated love seat where we again made photosynthetic osmotic self-creation ours, thrustingly. You were wolfless aware in your fluttering fulsomeness, you had been here many times before with many others manifesting your joinedness with the prequantum. Reality of your silky sallow skin, echoic in a chamber of maiden thought that bore us to a threshold that overarching whisked us away making more hay than any words could say, nani nay. I say you intoned, surprised but notoriously not. The fingering of the black and white keys to unlock the mysteries. Of your hand and bow stroking the strings of reality. Shaking then stopping the organ's slow movement. My tears upon the parchment of your soul. Whole. I curl up in the comfort swirl of your blanket warmth, in the drawer of desire. The lies that hide in the words open to multi-sided serenity. Heroic of course I am, Samson, hairlessly hairy in Gaza, my pillar of salt elapsing even as it spurts forth. I desire you as my heroism desires me. Worshipful you smile at my bald head upon a platter. The crowd aroused us. We heard the sex in the room above, and we fell into each other's arms, recrudescently concupiscently crepuscular. I hear you ask. Laughter in the dark, matter over mind? Come again. Elegy 7. Ready to walk, Rainer? Peripatetic, precarious, pre-priapatic words allowing potent, painful to hide. Seduced by the universe. Wooing, wowing. Throw the die. Tie-dye. Let the photons go, floweriness fractaled Minger sponge sucks up, into zero volume of infinite area emergent. Was ready to walk with you again, Rainer? Your words allowing me potent, painful to hide the explosion started in my heat. A frozen song of a blitzkrieg glass sowing seeds of dirtress unconsolable uncertainty uncollapsing. Doubt notoriously the instinctual instability of humanity. Each leaf falling a missile that kills and cures. Pharmacon. The palm of peace concreteness that takes without givingness. The fig opens the wounds of many. The fecund orifices of redly succulent death-givers. Your words are enough, lover, to save me. To kill me. Sweetly with diplomatic word swords. Sleeping hearing the music of the night. Curfew. Curfew. Dogsum. The cruising death-givers arrive in the cacophony of curfew. Visiting the end. Our bodies destroying by sleeping as dropping off destiny defies endlessness. The small songs kill us all, the composers of the death music talk shit and we die. The putrescent tomb music of the tears. It's our song. We dance limbs unlocked and bloody. Sleeping we knew nothing of the hit that played us to eternity. That raped us, shell-like shoved us into a crater rubble-filled synthesized sound seized the moment. You crane your neck. It is cut off. Stuck out too far. And sleeping nodding off. Sodding off. The leaves of the foreshadowed forest found us chopped up and ready to mass gave burn. The trinities tossed our lives interconnectedness fetal formed. No way. Praiseworthiness of the praiseworthy. The music of the all clears. Sirens soothe our blood-soaked passages to future's passchendaele. Entrenched meaning. Rat-infested hole our home. Shake his parapet hand. Sudden. The body evaluating its self-creation. Relief BAS. We applaud our epitaph. What a laugh, an eyed human skin shade. They're warning us, the dead canary in the bottom of the cage. The Davy light extinguished, exhausted, shells sucked us dry. In the darkness of au fond de la mind by Nobel's fine product illumined is your Eckelberg hoarding, signifier signified. Hand outstretched to be shake seemed notoriously stirred. The silent traffic in the sunset sky seduces me again. An advertising slogan for the planet. Make it gangrener. The stench cut off in the pile beside the hacksaw surgeon's table. That is the vision that we elastoplast over with complacent zeal panicking. But butterflied we can shed crypto blue-eyed tears to clean the sullied feet of transgressors, all who haunt themselves and us to precarious prematurity. It is our choice. See it in the crypto blue-eyed you would cry too if it happened to you singers. It is our sun ambulance song as we dance with the camel through the needle's eye. Chartres was in your eye as you tried to fingernail find yourself Rainer. I was there with you in the Munich streets that shone in the evening showers as the trams sparked along the thronged avenues. Then the Swiss mountains where walks and clean rains washed your soulless soul for the ungodly angel's present prescience. Yes, your sexual prowess moved the Rodin in you to erect ejaculation elation. The angel satisfied you too, though you were not sure if the angel could come too. You opened your handkerchief to wipe, to come clean. It was empty, full of enmity, espousing eternity of that angel's wind-fallen wing. Did it hear your advertising slogan? Buy two get on free. No fare is enough to pay, no return either. The womb to the tomb tour. Wait for it. These grand tourists inhabit the hinterland of greed where totalitarianism is ignored, is actively encouraged, if it enriches the rich and impoverishes to pauperization the poor. The tourists reap the harvest of death-givers that they devoutly wish foreshadowed for Gefallen and all. Elegy 8. Feel the words wordlessly flower-flowing re-wolf. Welcome to the real world. Spool. Mind-blowing disappeared disconnected inviolable invisibility of multiplicity. The eyes are open, Hydra all-seeing being. All eyes open themselves interconnectedness in the open. Multifaceted eyes of the painted lady cry too. True blue ocean of mindless maternally mountaintop mounted tears. Uncounted concreteness counterpoint ordinally ocularly ordained. Play wordlessly I'm game. The animal likeness emerges as Godhead idolatry ensues. You can't keep a good man down coming the tightrope walker's tale, told by a snake and an eagle, tongue flicking, feathers flying. The contradiction contained and exclaimed. We slither and slide grandiloquently glide, we are the glistening specters of the astrological sphere. As hermaphrodites we appear to give birth to ourselves, suckers succubus inner incubus. One born every minute. Seeing the seething movements in the street and the cues foreshadowing food. The solitary figure in the corner. The unemptied bins. The car exuding microcellular crap. Take a lungfishful. Crawling gasping from a primordial sea of pollution the motes in the eye of the cosmos, small-floweredness self-pollinating empty poseurs gone as soon as framed by us all. The conners conned. Welcome to the newsreel world butterflied and you would cry to Ness. The small tweet to shuffling feet. Fast foodness fondly fattens us for slaughter. See it in massed enmity. Ibis abound. Nepenthe pharmacon of the White Islands fauna falling. Unoa speaks. Unoa. Espousing wife and animal like we look at our own double-open death-given moments. Becoming crypto-blue-eyed, seeing our childhood shrink to nothing as our furtive future grows to everything via the osmosis of tidal Hamiltonian forces, driven from ebb to napes and tatties flowing. Diana knows. Her white skin glowing in the afterglow of afterbirth. Eat up, it's good for you, would cry two boo-hoo territories exclaim, frightening the animals they are themselves. In the mirror they narcissistically give nothing, coming from nothing on the empty isles and Gaza Beach they beseech blindly. The rhizome arborescence keeps our growth uncontained, gnome is close. Dendritic streams of thought bien? Gillis and his maternally mass disturbation mate are nodding by shaking their heads. We et non-interconnectedness interdit, right up our street. In the crypto-blue-eyed hand, searching for the burst artery, their eyes meet and the boy's last drop spurts. Walkabout ensues, the blood on the bus, the young bums in the teeming streets. Strangeness awaken the spectral traces as cluster bombs fall. A turban-clad idiot grins stupidly, smugly, snug in his own empty, snappy, happy, nappy backdrop, a pantomime idiot's perambulations. I smile, tear-stained face falling, seeing the horse's rear appear. She was awake, her healing hands a Creole trader's gift, hermaphrodite's handkerchief now torn from her headlessly, binding wounds, binding loops, spool life spoil spilling, Eugene's Eugenides at war. The blindness that we all are, that everything is, soon gone sooner forgotten, seen only by the entirety that is us notice monotony, the poetry that is undelineated multiverse uninformed, uniformed. The child dead on the bed tells us this tale. We all know it, laying wreaths of fear about the grief that is not theirs but ours. Those who are left in their mourning clothes. Dank and dirty in the moist London smog. Still suffocating our smallness. Which we can celebrate, it is minute man's monument, reflected in the vulture's eye as we become carrion of our own make. Self-consuming small-flowered graves will not suffice to bury the remains of what was never really here. Just a wasted word or two in the epitaph of mankind. Rot in pieces. And unmonitored the inverse will with meandering starriness enjoy our finity, now it is gone. Swan song gone. Animal of death, free from death. Elegy 9. On a mountain road I met a eagle-eyed man with bog chain in hand. You look flushed. Poker-faced stared ahead. I bet you're easily led, we said, instead. Do not attempt to capture their essence, there on the page it lies, but in you dreams it does not. We are easily lead in the head, we said, breaking bread, drinking Tanner's cider in his mountain homestead. Their peak-provoked poetic collected clouds cumulonimbusly streaked the watercolor sky, and with the posy power of Rainer it rained richly. The refreshing falling free-flowing flower-feeding fecundity, rained Rainer, released releaser sensuously splashing my face revealed revealer. The Rainer pouring over the questioner questioned, the questioned questioner. Wondrous worder worded, worder worried worrier, worrier worried as edged edger, elegier elegied, elegier. By the graver graved, and graved engraver stood skull wearer of caps and bells, jested jester, jested, just in time to be sad. Alas, alack, alabasterer, alabastard, wombed, tomb. She spoke amhustly, agony is a look I like, it's not a lie smiling she continued, though of course I am, or my words are, spinning uncontrollably, contortedly on these unpublished pages. The chorus responded we no longer longed and doubter, Thomas. Filer filed out as chorus worded us 2 by 2 the snake oil salesman stoppers saved us shock Gamara, embarker embarked, saw them all. Bloomed baby bloomer. Unfettered by daily man I stand tiptoe a hill-top streaming a freehand sketch catch floating aimless oceanic in the midnight garden free-rooted dream tree iggle and me sleepy. Awaking from blissfulness, I see the scuttling crab like daily rule of small self-deceiving liars whose petty beanocomic egocentric irritable reason-driven splitting blinds us, masking the big issues, a tissue we all fall downtrodden, where are the tissues? The early departed started. Why have to be human shimmering in polarization's multi-sided melancholia? Like the smile in the wind-fallen gefallen and branchless bayleaf. Felled fell flower re-wolfed crown of thorns mimicking breeze-blown lamentable Cheshire cat laughing laurel. Nestling negative capability comforts the reader, lit o lit. Once only once and never again, invisible arising inevitable liar lying on Freudian counterpoint couch, can't be erased, dazzled dazed. Take your medicine Socrates, pharmacon farm make on, wear your mask pan, Dimmick Damon. Shunning the fatally rational random, but desiring its underbelly softness, its caressingly close demise. Device. Once just once its deterrestrialized uncancelableness unwholesome Unheimlichkeit and FFF light Untergang, Ubergang, supercomposers Eagle and ASP down coming tightrope tripping tragically, strangeness's contradiction contorted consorted, necking in the decking. Happiness pre-priapetically prescript, postscript preforms preconsciously phylogenetically a small flowered smile thanksgivingly failed harvest festival donation. Given not to count Dracula the 10 billion light-year distant natally cosmic counted canine costed painted lady multicolored pre-birthing in my bewebbed blue-lit bed. Chest of drawers becotted, a beautifully blanketed manger sponged soaking up multiversal calm of virtualish Todd Thanateros Rainer driven? Daddy mumming me. Grab another handful of mountain earth to form a birth, watch it trickle through your fingers. Not wet enough. Did you bring any souvenirs back? Lost laveniers maybe. Gentian smelt, Tower Bridge double-crossing us as Tall Master passed over, arms raised in surrender. Weekender tripped out tourist, flowing grabbing what they fuel filling station futurelessness cancelable can. Then all roads leading to, do as they do, Rome and Tiber, to Thebes on the neverless Nile. There the ropers roped ropers, and potterers pottered, doing their things as the painted angelic lady became stunned, stunner. All-pervading penetrator, penetrated were handmaiden, and intervined, diviner, divined. So in sweven sexually woven tension, preserver. There lies unseen by the infinite, things only for our finite futurelessness, finding that painted ladies io hymenated hymenoptera polycryptochromely circadian heartbeat spellbinding. The placental incidental blood that one springtime earth shed enough to eternally sate me, leave me lying in stateless paradise. Nectar eigenvector, specter scepter, respect. Rainer loaded loader spilled his showed shower. Splish. Splash. Splosh. Foot and mouth puddle befuddler. Chopper chopped overhead, underhead, here it comes necker. Wait for it. Open sesame Jack O'Dory skywalked, squawker squawked sewers sewed me, hung drawn and quartered fallowfieldly thus unblanketing my bed-friended familiar following before me, dreader, deadly death dear died. My Picaresque pen pal transcendental, and translational status becoming Dirac superpoet, superposed superposer of life. This mule-faced reality stands dark-cloaked, scythe and skeletal hand pointing poutingly womb-tomb wards. I smile wearing a welcoming liar's lair stare starry-eyed with sated satisfaction we shake on it. Kin on kin. Skinner skinned, humanely lampshade from bleeding burn earth. See, still I live. On what? What was, what is to come, ever-lessened childhood and future laveneer, superpostioned lying death wish donated battery slowed slower heart swelled as if to volcanically virally mushroom multiversally. Elegy 10. Egg I wiped from my face. How did it get there? You well know, the cartoucher carted Carter threw it up after it was evaluated, excreted, excavated. Where? Over there. After or before? Remember the burial of the dead Kings Valley store. They say it was pyramid selling. Not pyramidal hierarchization. Pyramid of needs. La Pyramide de Besoins de Abraham Maslow. The succulents were Mexican, not African, little donkey. Egypt caught clingingly Evercar touched, 10 trumpets sound in my Karnak ear Memphis myth sphinx pyramided Cheapsward. Kings Valley dug up by colonizing dishonest dead men. Ramses Pent spent, Taras Shevchenko's Ukrainian pain our pain. Ptolemaic self-centered Putin his halfpenny word. Ank in Mitak, priced word ever liver ever lived and Hodopwords. Nihilist book of deathless words Delphi's reed raft reverer revered run runner. Dip your oar in, stick it in, Putin pain again killing game, trench stench. Putin hand in buried no man's land hand. You've got to handkerchief to him. How many to soak up the blood of his special operation? That's your thesis title? Right on, brother. Chariot will blades of grass gone. Little Princedom Saqqara now Sahara. What do you mean, waterless way, Suez pudding, read C, solved solve? I or J or C no way, foreshadowed interpretation is opinion onion not fact Paul's letter to the prodigal men. Specious speculation was an infernal infiltration as precious percolation it transpired revealed underlying sublime stratification. Pride and Prejudice law, we saw, jug, drip drip to dirty years through rocky tears. The water cycle ridden over a cliff-faced futurelessness. Me Darcy, you Jane Aus 10 dug up Rio, De Niro fiddle faddle fire filled fucked futon. The die open cast, mine doesn't matter. Me Darcy, you 238 Planet 8? Sleep tight, Earth set alight, lit o lit, dead in seabed, torpedoer you 235C, now set my people free. Crown of thorns swarms so pawns kids to Gaia warmed globally. Miracle needed for all we have seeded. Dry dug succeeded. Part the reed C? Can't, dead, C? What about A or B? The triars quoth meandering master of sincere monies. The children will foot the bill, unrescued lying under the rubble of the socio-politico-economic earthquake that will crushingly topple the edifices of greed-driven suffocating stone to death me mercantilism. What about EEBA gum commerce, too sheepish to say you were lucky ducky? You shall have a fishy on a little dishy. Flipped flipper flipped. Dolphins' purposeful somnambulant sonar developed naturally. Did our Photoshop synthetic cryptochrome blue exposure to circadian virtual life cycle develop naturally 2x2x2, word lied, archive filled multidimensionally? Word leader lied? Mote mentimenti? Contra la monter mos mentimenti? Fomos fontaine foudroige depends au fond de la mama mine? Non-passage, die in the sky. Pie in the lie. Orthogonally original, fallen. Vergist meinigt. So St. Antoine's time flew, foudroige P38 Frenchly falling from desert sky, half-moon, sandy and starry-eyed the lost letters making skull-breaking, world-shaking words, mos mort par avion pour vous, voyage. Crossing Betox bastard border buttocks postal order. You've got EEBA mum mail. Falling happiness self-raising deflowed deflower rewolfer. Wank sank. Fib-fabrication. Fab-fabrication. Fob-fabrication. Feb-fabrication. Fub-fububrification. The kiss, you don't know what it does to a woman, you need to be careful who you kissed. The kiss, Rodin Rodeo. Reverberating around the stage door. Mined from the rich theatrical scenes, the suffering stone with a life of its own, frozen blood in its veins released by the hammer, chisel, pickaxe of the deep-delved dantesque earth. Don't look now. Lament, you diggers of dirt. Deathless you become when wordlessly you are expressed as songs of sorrow by the psalmist's lied lead. You lamented Carmen then, the Hippocrene cursing you with memory, you drunk of brought you to your childhood where you yourself met, following her blushing youth into the fecund fields. She waited like a sphinx for him, knowing and lamenting his blue Nile inconstancy which he now saw, and lost love lamented too, both of them. Nevertheless, Nile-floated stone suffered the sculptor to release from its cold depths to the cold light of daydreaming day. The secret chambers of maiden thought the pyramid coughed up caryatids, holding the lovers up for the futureless future to meld into another child's death-driven life. She was and was not his wife. He remembers as she led him through the working clockwork daydreaming day, avoiding the pre-laid mines of depression. Comforted by his penis, she held him as he volcanically exploded into the night sky. The semen shining, and now wandering there with the other disheveled stars, amongst which the maternal sun of betrayal held its eternal look of agony breath. See, there she held his handkerchief tear laden, and pointed to the constellation of constellations that spilled sperm had sown. And near to the pole star she starry-eyed saw, saying, maybe praying. Cassiopeia upside down, woman, mummy, bandage-wrapped cocoon, permanently preserved hanging woman, cosmos enthroned in the tarot, turn up for the books of the gods. Mummy sold Andromeda's star-bearing nebulous neck. Perseus took her in his arms, saved her from cliff-bound monstrous harm, and took a kiss profound as his price. She dug into his dreaming mind to reveal his loss as he was left alone, unable to love her and poetry. She hugs him and crying allows him to depart to the mountains of solitude, where he must with eagle and asp in hermit cave abide. And not even the long Vertralich dead and dreaming can his footfall hear, though they are wakened by his shared eternal vision, and see his hazel tree catkins as they are by spring rains so superposedly serenely superposed in the uncertainty of the doubtful sky, and like painted ladies' blue-lit eyes fly. So we become aware that Thanateros entropically entangled beyond the pleasure principle is ever there. Appendix: A short history of Rilke's Elegies. Rainer Maria Rilke, 1875–1926, is said to be the poet most often translated into Anglo-American in the 20th century. He was born in Prussian Prague and was from an early age a poetic prodigy. He had close relations with such famous patrons and matrons respectively as Auguste Rodin and Lou Salome, which gave him a broad polyglottal artistic base. From this root Rilke grew, to work through, der Scharbeiten, cultivating with care his thing made, poesis, and his eternal beginner, poetic philosophy. This culminated in the majestic magical Duino Elegies, which he began at the Castle Duino in 1912, where famous physicist Ludwig Boltzmann had earlier suicided, and was completed in the mountainous seclusion of Musset in Switzerland in 1922.